Do something for me. Sometime in the next few seconds, whenever you feel like it, clench your right hand into a fist. Don't plan it. Just do it when the urge hits. Go. Did you catch it? Not the fist, the deciding. The exact instant you went from not yet to now. You felt the action coming. But the moment of choice itself, you can't quite find it. Can you? It didn't feel like you built it. It felt like it arrived, already made. That's not your imagination. Your brain commits to your movements before you. The part of you listening, right now, knows anything about it. And with the right equipment, we can watch that decision form. Sometimes a full second early. Sometimes, unbelievably, several seconds early. For decades, scientists looked at this and announced that free will was an illusion, that you're a passenger who only thinks they're driving. And here's the twist this whole video is building toward. They were wrong. But to see why they were wrong, you first have to see exactly how right the data is. You believe you're the pilot, that somewhere in your head, a conscious you sits at the controls, weighs the options, makes the call, and then sends the command down to your muscles. First you decide, then you act. That order feels so obvious, it's barely worth saying. It's also not the order things happen in. And the first person to prove that did it with a clock. In 1983, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet sat people in front of a special fast clock and asked them to do almost exactly what you just did. Flick their wrist whenever they freely felt like it, and note the exact position of the clock's dot the instant they became aware of the decision to move. At the same time, he recorded two other things: the precise millisecond the muscle actually fired, and the electrical activity building in the brain beforehand. Scientists already knew about that buildup, a slow, rising wave called the readiness potential, first found back in the 1960s, that climbs in the motor cortex before any voluntary movement. Here's what Libet found, and it broke something open. The muscle fired. The conscious decision to move, the moment they felt now, landed about 200 milliseconds before that. But the readiness potential, the unconscious buildup, had started more than 500 milliseconds before the muscle. The brain began preparing to move roughly 350 milliseconds before the person was aware they decided anything. The decision was already underway before you got the memo. Now, you could argue that's just a fuzzy electrical hum, averaged across the whole brain. So in 2011, a neurosurgeon named Itzhak Fried went deeper than anyone had. His epilepsy patients already had electrodes inside their brains for medical reasons, so he could listen to individual neurons, one at a time, firing in a living, awake human mind. He watched a population of just 256 neurons in the movement planning region, and by tracking them, his team could predict that a person was about to move. With around 80% accuracy, a full 700 milliseconds before that person reported wanting to. Not a vague hum. Specific cells lighting up in the dark, spelling out the decision before you could read it yourself. Then it got worse, because all of that is about timing, when you'll move. A team led by John Dylan Haynes wanted the content, what you'll choose. They put people in a brain scanner and gave them the simplest free choice imaginable. Press a button with the left hand, or the right, whenever you like, whichever you like. By reading patterns deep in the front of the brain, Haynes's team could predict which hand a person would choose, up to 7 seconds before they consciously decided. Account for the lag in the scanner's signal, and the choice was sitting in the brain as much as 10 seconds ahead of the conscious, I'll go left. But be careful here, this is where headlines lie. They did not read minds perfectly. The prediction was right about 60% of the time. Better than a coin flip. Clearly real, but nowhere near certainty. Hold on to that number. It matters later. The most unsettling demonstration came in 2016, when researchers turned it into a game you could lose. They wired people to a computer reading their brainwaves in real time and told them, press this pedal whenever you want. But if a red light flashes, stop. What the subjects didn't fully grasp was that the computer was watching for their readiness potential. The instant it detected the unconscious wave that meant a press is coming, it flashed the red light, stop. And again, people couldn't. Their foot came down anyway. Because once that wave crosses a certain threshold, about 200 milliseconds before the muscle, the actions is locked in. They were racing their own brain to the trigger, and their conscious mind kept arriving seconds so. Free will is dead. The brain decides everything in the dark. You're just told afterward, case closed. That's the story that went around the world. It's wrong. And the most fascinating part of this whole field is the decades scientists have since spent proving it's wrong. The first crack came from a researcher named Aaron Scherger in 2012, and it goes straight at the readiness potential, the centerpiece of the entire scary story. Everyone assumed that rising wave was the brain secretly deciding. Scherger asked a simpler question. What if it isn't a decision at all? Your brain is never quiet. It's constantly full of random electrical noise, drifting up and down on its own. Now picture being told to press a button whenever you feel like it. With nothing real to decide, your brain just idles near the edge of action and waits for a random wave of that noise to happen to tip it over the line. And here's the trick. If you only ever look backward, from the moment of action, that random noise will always look like a smooth, intentional buildup. Every single time. Like tracing an avalanche back to its start and deciding the mountain must have been planning it. It wasn't planning anything. It was just snow shifting until a random gust tipped the balance. The famous readiness potential may be exactly that. Static, not a secret plan. And if so, the real decision and the action happen at essentially the same moment. Then came the deeper blow. In 2019, from a neuroscientist named Uri Maus. He noticed something everyone had ignored for 30 years. Every one of these experiments, Libet, Fried, Haynes, studied meaningless choices. Flick a wrist, pick a button for no reason with nothing at stake. So Maus ran it again. But this time, the choice mattered. He had people choose to send $1,000 real to one real charity over another. A decision with weight and values and consequences. And the readiness potential vanished. For the choices that actually meant something, the your brain decided first signal simply wasn't there, which means, for 30 years, science had been studying the brain's autopilot for trivial twitches and mistaking it for proof that the pilot didn't exist. And there's one more thing the doom story left out. Even when that unconscious wave starts to fire, you can still stop it. Right up until that 200 millisecond point of no return. Researchers have a name for this. They call it free won't. You may not consciously start every action, but you can veto it. Consciousness isn't the engine, it's the brake. So who's actually in charge? In here? The honest answer is stranger, and a lot better than no one. Your conscious mind was never built to micromanage your body. If you had to deliberately author every footstep, every blink, every flick of a finger, you would seize up completely. There isn't enough of you to go around. So your brain does something elegant. It hands all the small, meaningless motion to the noise and the autopilot, and keeps the conscious self free for the only thing that ever truly needed it, the choices that matter. You don't decide each footstep. You decide where you're walking. You never chose the millisecond your wrist would flick, and you were never supposed to. That was never where your freedom lived. It lives in the things you take seconds and days and years to choose. The next trivial thing you do today, your brain will quietly handle without you, the way it always has. But the next thing that truly matters, that one, is still yours.